Kendra was asking, which is sort of, are we going to be pushing and selling courses? No, the idea here is actually just to share knowledge. What we're really hoping to do is to guide people through the property market ups and downs by sharing the knowledge that we've gleaned over the years. And when I say we, I mean Eric and James, because I am still trying to figure all this out. I am here as the mouthpiece to try and hopefully glean as much as I can to avoid making future big property mistakes like I did with my first one, but B, to really help everyone in the market, whether it's like you, Kendra, as a sort of like a just past agent who's trying to get as much knowledge from the market as possible, to property people who are looking to purchase their first property, even second property, although we do understand that with the recent cooling measures, obviously, like those looking to buy a second property, they're going, is that something we really want to do right now? So hopefully with all of that, we're able to demystify those areas. Cecilia, feel free to say hi, and Alex as well. Like that's the whole point. We do have, just to point out for you guys, we do have in our chat box a couple of links for you. So if you're keen to join our next session, which will be on the 16th of February, that will be on freehold versus leasehold properties, which I think is quite an interesting topic, and a lot of people are very keen on that. But also, if you'd like to sit down and chat a little more with James and Eric, then you can also just fill out our appointment form. It makes it a lot easier that way, because we can get you guys some one-on-one personalized action going on. But with these sessions as well, we hope to be as personal as possible. We do have our presentation prepared based around the questions that you guys had submitted. And then from there, we will take any further questions that we may not have answered or that we may have missed out on, to see how we can tailor this to what you guys actually want to learn. So we'll just wait for a few more people to come in, because in typical Singapore fashion, everyone only rocks up 8 p.m. or later. And we understand that that's not a problem. So we'll just give it a little while. So in the meantime, Kendra, if you've got any other questions, Alex, if you want to ask any questions, Cecilia, please feel free just to jump in and join in the conversation as well.
Okay, welcome, Alex. Welcome, Cecilia. Welcome, Kendra. I think Chinese New Year is coming. So I'm not so sure whether you are taking a break from Chinese New Year or you're waiting for the last day. Some of our clients actually have a very, very busy schedule. So right now will probably be a good time for them to reorganize their mind, to think through what they really want. So this is also the purpose for us to do sharing in terms of information on both En Bloc or even other properties or things, so that you can be more better educated in a sense to make decision, either by opinions, by our case studies, or even by statistics. So if you have any questions, don't be shy. You can just on the speaker. You can ask us any question. Hello, Charlene. Yeah, welcome in.
Hi, Charlene. Just to let you know, we're just giving everyone a few more minutes to trickle on in. Feel free to say hi. Don't be shy. We've got Kendra, who is already asking questions, and that's great to see. And we welcome this to be a real sort of two-way conversation. I don't want this to be a we talk at you. This should be an opportunity for you to ask any questions that you may have. We will be doing the presentation, but we'll stop at certain points to get in your feedback as we go along. Hi, Charlene. Nice to meet you on the chat box. That is fine too. If you have any questions that you'd rather just type in on the chat box, I think that's also really good, because then if you do have any questions, it doesn't interrupt the flow. Just pop it in there, and then later on we can address them as and when we get through on the presentation. We're going to give it 3 more minutes before we start. And like I said, we like to keep these sessions. Hello, Cecilia. I can see the top of your forehead. I like to keep these sessions intimate so that we can get everybody's questions answered. So feel free. Like I said, this is supposed to be a session where you are able to answer and get your questions answered. So we do keep it nice and intimate. Oh, Cecilia's gone again. So before we start, James, Eric, the topic today is En Bloc. Is this a topic that gets you excited, or is it a topic that sort of gives you the sweats a bit? Because like it is such a, it can be such a big buzzword.
So En Bloc is something which as realtors we would hear it once every few years. It's very cyclical in nature. In between the cycles, we will not hear about it. You won't hear any whisper of it in the market. And then once you hear about it, once a particular En Bloc goes through, that's where the mad rush come in, and then we'll keep hearing it in the market again. So it's I won't say it's something which we would love to hear or dread hearing. It's very, as I mentioned, it's always a natural progression of the Singapore property market, whereby you will start with something and then En Bloc will come and then will go, and then no En Bloc for a while, up and down again. It's keep repeating. We've seen this at least like the past 2-3 cycles already in Singapore.
And it's a very natural thing, because normally for En Bloc to happen, you has to be on a property uptrend. So we have been on the uptrend, right? Surprisingly, since COVID or slightly before COVID, we have been on uptrend since 2018 until now. So the government is also very wise. They know that it's coming, so they're doing preemptive measures like to reduce the number of En Blocs. I personally think they cannot stop all the En Blocs from happening, because fundamentally the developers are in the business. If the government land sale does not have enough land, the developers would have to do their own due diligence, right, to select suitable candidates to En Bloc, so that they will be in the business of tearing down, building up, and selling to the market, and provide homes to all Singaporeans, PRs, as well as foreigners.
Awesome. Okay, well, I think we should probably get going. I know we've got a couple more people who are just logging on at the moment, but I think, guys, hello, Cecilia.
Hi.
Nice to hear from you. Okay, so if anyone's got any questions at any point, you can either put it in the chat box, or you can also just jump in at the appropriate moments. We'll let you know when those come up. But just a little quick introduction for all of you who have just logged in. I know we've got a couple more, I think. There we go, another couple coming through. But hello, my name's Kelly. Welcome to the Home Truth, where we really are hoping to help you learn the truth, the home truth, and nothing but the truth about the property market here in Singapore, and hopefully get you guys making smarter property choices. Now, in our last masterclass, we talked a little bit about resale versus a new development and the big mistakes that you can make, like I did, where I lost $80,000. Not much fun. But En Bloc is a bit of a buzzword at the moment, and it is a chance for you to either make a lot of money. It is also a chance for you to lose money. So is it the right thing for you? We're going to be delving into that in a short while. And if your property is undergoing En Bloc, then what does it mean for you as well? So those are some of the things that we're going to be talking about. Plus, we're going to be identifying a few places that we think have En Bloc potential. We're going to look into our crystal ball in that sense. So no promises, of course, but I think it's very important that we just analyze things properly. We do have our two experts. We've got James, who is he's our big talker. He is the guy who actually sold me my place. And ever since I first met him, I was in awe of all the things he knew about the property market and just the way he was able to relate to clients, just really assessing their needs and working out, okay, what is it that someone needs and how can he match that need with something that he has? Or if he doesn't have something on his database, then he goes and finds it. The other guy on our panel today is Eric. Eric is our data guy. If you need numbers, he is the guy for you. It is insane how he's a little bit of a robot and I don't always understand him, but the good thing is James does, and he will be able to translate all of the jargon. If you do not understand some of the things that Eric puts out later, don't worry. James will help demystify all of that. So sit tight. We're hopefully going to be wrapping this up within the hour so that we can release you guys back. But we really want to make sure that you guys get all the knowledge that you can glean from these two experts over the course of this hour. If you've got any questions, like I said, in the chat box is where you need to go. Drop them in. I'll also be calling out for questions as and when throughout the presentation as well. And I think with that, James, why don't you take it away?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. My name is James. Thanks for taking time this evening to attend our session. So let me just start by sharing the screen first. Okay, can everyone see the screen? Can?
Yep, all good.
Okay, so today, En Bloc. Wait. What is an En Bloc? So, I believe everybody knows what's En Bloc. Basically, En Bloc is when everyone, the residents of one development, collectively sell to a single buyer. And the single buyer, sometimes it is, most of the time, is a private developer. Sometimes it will be the government. So one thing to know is that anything can be En Bloc. It can be a commercial building. It can be a residential building. So some people say, no, James, conservation cannot En Bloc. Actually, conservation also can En Bloc. But developers will not want to En Bloc a conservation property.
Why not?
Reason being, it's conservancy. We can't tear it down. When we can't tear it down, we cannot build higher. We can't build more. Therefore, there is not a lot of financial incentive for developers to En Bloc conservation developments. But there are instances whereby they En Bloc conservation building and the surrounding properties, and they keep the conservation building as a clubhouse, for example. So those are some of the rare instances where the conservation building gets En Bloc. All right. When a private developer takes over the place in Singapore, we just En Bloc law. You know, that's what we always hear. But when the government En Blocs the place, it is always what we call SERS, selective En Bloc redevelopment. So it's mostly for older HDBs. All right, so private developers En Bloc, for government is mostly SERS. Okay, so we would hear the criteria for En Bloc. For condos which are less than 10 years since TOP, generally we need a 90% approval from the residents to go ahead. Although this is highly unlikely a development that is less than 10 years old will En Bloc, because everything is still new, everything is just banking. There is not a lot of incentive for them to want to En Bloc the place. And even if they want to, they'll be asking at a very high price, which developers chances are would not want to pay. If it's condos with more than 10 years old, yes, you only need 80%. So that's significantly a lot lesser of the owners to agree to sell. And based on the past records of successful En Bloc cases, we are looking at those around 30 to 40 years old developments that are most prone to a successful En Bloc. Point to note is that an En Bloc sale can take up to 2 years from the start, meaning when they set up the CSC, Collective Sales Committee, which means they get together a formal committee to start the whole En Bloc process, to setting a reserve price, meaning how much they want to sell it for, getting an offer from the developer, and then getting the 80% requirement to actually completing the sale, getting the money. This whole process takes 2 years. Why am I mentioning this? Because this is quite significant. Later in this discussion, Eric will be sharing why this 2-year period poses quite a fair bit of problems to some of the En Bloc owners. All right. Okay. Just now we talked about what is an En Bloc, and then here we talk about why there are En Blocs going around. The two main reasons in Singapore. Number one, land scarcity. As we all know, Singapore, we are a very, very small island, very, very small country. Unlike big countries like Indonesia, China, where after a building gets old, or rather when a city gets old, they can just vacate the city, build a brand new city and move everyone there. The old building, they just leave it because it's cheaper for them to just relocate everyone, build a new township and move everyone there than to have to demolish and rebuild the space. Because to them, land it's abundant. They can just keep popping up new cities all over. But in Singapore, we can't. We do not have the luxury of land. When we do not luxury of land, what we do, old ones, demolish, build new ones. So Singapore is in a constant state of urban renewal. We have to keep reusing the land. We have to keep reusing the land. So basically, we have no way out but to tear down old buildings and build new ones. So basically, this is why en bloc in Singapore would be a perpetual thing. It will always happen in Singapore. There's absolutely no way that en bloc will stop. All right. Okay. Second reason, developers' profits. We have a CDL, Hong Leong, Guaco Land. They are developers. They are private businesses that are in the business of making money. Very simply put it, more units to sell, they make more money. So why they always en bloc? They look for something which is maybe lesser units, and then they'll en bloc the thing, tear it down, build more units. The more they build, more units there are, more money they make. I'll give you a very, very simplistic explanation. You always see places like Telok Kurau, whereby there are many, many boutiques development. Kelly, you went past one that day.
Yes.
Very small, I think, one block, 20 units, a single lap pool, which is like 20 meters kind of thing.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, there seems to be like a cropping up of all these places where you would normally see a semi-detached house, and then in its place now, it's like a little monstrosity with lots of facilities.
So basically, it's how developers go about making money. Imagine a pair of semi-detached house. They will acquire this pair for, say, 4 million each, total of 8 million. And then with whatever government taxes, developers taxes, ABSC and everything, all miscellaneous comes up to 1 million. That's 9 million. To construct a 5-story development might set them back by maybe another 8 million. All right. So in totality, that's a cost of $17 million to build 20 units. So for simplicity's sake, we just sell 1 million each unit. That's 20 million. Less of a cost of 17 million, we still make 3 million. That's around 18% profit. So this is
okay. So it doesn't sound like a lot of profit, but at the same time, you're like, 3 million. Yeah, I could do that. Question is, James, do you have like 17 mil for me to go and buy a couple of places and develop it myself? That would be really nice.
So you see, 3 million doesn't sound a lot, but if you consider that their outlay is only 17, and furthermore, it's not all 17 at one go, it's progressive. So the returns for them, the ROI for them is actually pretty decent. So this is why developers are always on the lookout for spaces like this. All right.
So in your opinion, then, spaces like this, easier than trying to take over a big development? I mean, we see our favorite Bedok Court in front of us, and you and I both love this place, right? But is that why it's a little bit easier then to? I mean,
yes,
it's less change to part with at the start, right?
It's just a pair of semi-detached owners. You just need 2 approvals. Bedok Court, 400 units, you need 400 approval, or rather 80% of the 400 approval. So that's a lot more work to go by. So as you can see, en bloc though doesn't really have to happen for high-rise building. It can be for a row of shop houses. It can be for a row of landed houses. It can also happen. All right.
Interesting. Okay, sure.
Okay, so what's en bloc? Why is it en bloc? Okay, this is where many of you ask these questions in the questionnaire. What makes a property prime for en bloc? So I've broken them down into four components that we feel makes a property prime for en bloc. Firstly, increase in land and property prices in the vicinity. So one telltale sign of an en bloc is when you notice that the value of your surrounding land and the value of the surrounding properties in your neighborhood has risen significantly. This is always, normally we will see this in an area that has undergoing massive transformation. For example, the Paya Lebar area, where a few years back in the master plan, we are hearing that there's Paya Lebar rejuvenation, transformation of the Paya Lebar area. So you will see that it suddenly got new shopping mall. Suddenly you will see a new bus interchange.
And I think this plays into your point of in our last session when we talked a lot about sort of making sure that if you are purchasing, especially if you're purchasing a resale or whatever, you got to look at the growth area, right? Which is where I had failed because there was very little growth area, but sort of where we are at the moment in that Juche Yunos area, we're sort of like leveraging off that whole Paya Lebar and how it sort of like creeped out because it really has grown, it has developed.
Exactly. So basically when prices are going up, when we as consumers, we see developers with their data team, analyst team, they're like, hey, these prices are going up here. We should look to buy into these places before it rise even more. I buy it, I redevelop it, and I will sell it at a higher price. So when you see prices in your neighborhood has been going up significantly and constantly, you'll be like, hey, something is happening here. Maybe properties in this area would be prime for an en bloc. Okay. Second thing would be plot ratio. Plot ratio is a word that anyone in the property market in Singapore would always hear about it, but we don't really understand what plot ratio is. So basically, if we go to URA master plan, go to your master plan, you can click, you can actually find out the plot ratio of your unit, of your, or rather of your land or your condo to see what's the plot ratio. Normally, these are numbers which you will see 1.4, 1.6, 2.1, 2.8. So at 1.4 is a very low density kind, which means we can only build up to 5 stories in general. All right, 1.6, 12, 2.1, 24, 2.8, 36. If you have a plot ratio, if you go on your master plan and you see your plot ratio is more than 2.8, happy days.
You what?
Because you can build very high. So when you can build very high, it makes it very attractive for a developer to want to buy that land so that they can build very high and build a lot of units to sell. All right. So the thing is, in many older developments in Singapore, when they were built, they tend to be lower in building height. And if you remember, they are a lot more spaced apart, unlike condos nowadays, which are facing each other. All right. They are very much spaced apart with open air car parks, green spaces here and there, basketball courts, that kind of thing. So what we notice is that they have not maxed out their plot ratio. When you have not maxed out your plot ratio, it will mean that when a developer comes in, they buy, they can max out the plot ratio. By maxing out the plot ratio means they can increase the number of units in the development, and then, based on my previous point, they can sell more units, make more money. All right. An example I can think of is nearby where I am, Changi Gardens. I will talk more about it later. Changi Gardens is a freehold development in the Loyang area near Changi Prison. They used to have around 80 units in the whole sprawling land, big open spaces, car parks, and all. So it was en bloc in 2017 and it was redeveloped to a new launch development comprising of 276 units. So that's more than three times. That's more than 3 times the number of the original number of units. So as you can see, the developers, they made a lot of money from there. All right, so it is developments like this which are attractive to developers because a lot of upside potential. So plot ratio is another thing that you should always look for when you are buying a property. Okay, next. Age of development. Simply put, the older the development is, the higher chance of an en bloc success. All right, 3 main reasons why we think so. Remaining years on on lease. Imagine you are a 99-year-old leasehold property, all right, and you are older development, say a 40-year-old development compared to a 50-year-old development. The 50-year-old ones has a lot less, has 10 years less on the lease, so which live around 49 years as compared to the one that left 59 years. If both go for en bloc, if both goes for en bloc at the same time, the one that has lesser years left on the lease, their reserve price chances have to be lower, agree? Because
Agree.
lesser years. So what happens is that a lower reserve price would make it more palatable for the developer. They would then be, I can accept this price because it's still within my budget compared to the one next door, which is older, it's younger. So the residents are all asking for a higher reserve price.
So I have a question then. If a developer is then taking on an older place, right? Like if it's only got 40 something years left on the lease, which especially in like the Bayshore area and sort of like the East Coast area, that there are quite a number of these older condos, right? What happens? Like surely they're not going to build something, like does the government take it back after the 99? Like this seems like such a gray area. So is there a way that they can extend the lease? Is that possible?
It is. So they'll they'll top up the lease back to the original 99. So what happens is when a developer buys something that has 50 years left on the lease, they en bloc the place with 50 years left. They would not just leave it as it is because no one will buy from them. No one will buy something that's 50 years left. So what?
I was going to say, like, you buy a new place and you're like, and you've got to move out in 40 years' time. It's just like, why would I do that? It's so expensive.
So what they will do is they will write to the government to top up the lease back to 99. So normally this top up of the lease, all this back end work, they will do it before they even try for the en bloc, because it'll be silly for them to do it en bloc and then tell the government, oh, actually I want to top up. So they'll get all the facts and all the financials in place first before they proceed with the en bloc. So
so question then, could the residents, like say if you really loved your place, because like, let's face it, you don't buy, well, I mean, at least I wouldn't buy a place with the hopes that it would get en bloc, right? But like, say if I were to buy like one of my favorite places like Bedok Court, right? I love it. It's spacious. There's facilities. It's got everything you need. It's in a great location.
I know what you're driving at. So
yeah,
yes, residents on their own, they can apply to top up the lease back, but it must be a collective agreement. That means if all three of us stays there, all three of us must agree to it. We can't, you want, you top up, I don't want that, I just leave it. Cannot. All of them have to agree to top up the lease back to the 99. And why residents don't do it? Because it is a pretty sum. It's not something that end users like us, consumers like us, can well afford. Normally, the amount is pretty astronomical, and it's usually in the territory of the big boys developers that can afford to pay that kind of money upfront. For us, it's really, really very tough to do so.
Okay, fair enough. I thought I'd try. Like, I was like, is there a loophole in this that we can try and exploit for like the nicer places? I mean, like, I love the bigger, older places, but they are few and far between nowadays. And it would be such a shame to see them go, but I kind of understand it as well. Because I mean, I think it comes up to your next point, right? Like, an old building is going to come with problems.
Before I get there, fun fact, there are some times when the developers en bloc a freehold development, but then they resell it as a 99.
Really?
Sneaky, eh? So
sneaky. So then they take it back, reserving the right to build something new.
Yes. So basically, it stays within the company. So it stays with them for a long time.
Interesting.
99 years later, it goes back to the company. All right, so that's one fact, but that's super common because it's quite hefty to do something like that.
Like, could I just ask a little bit something? Like, let's say it's an existing project. Let's say I'm staying in a condo. and then maybe let's say it's about 60 years lease, and
60 years left or 60 years?
30 years left.
30 years left. Okay.
Does the residents are they able to kind of like top up the lease?
Yeah, so we spoke about this. They can, but it must be a unified decision by all the residents to agree to.
So it's no longer an 80%, 90%, it's got to be 100%. Okay, we're willing to shell out this money.
To pay that money to top up to the government to get it back to the 99 or whatever they want to. But
and while still staying in that same project.
Yes. But it's, as I mentioned, it's quite an astronomical sum. We would think that it's not something that everyone in the condo can stomach. So normally it does not happen. It is normally something that a consortium, a group like the developer, that they are able to carry out. Okay. And okay, so back to my point, remaining years on lease. Second, increasing building repairs and maintenance costs. I'm not too sure whether any of you have been to an old development recently. For example, Bayshore Park, the Bayshore Park. So it's old. I think that it's coming to 40 years old. And if you are there,
Hey, no, it's not that old. Okay, same year. It's not that
Really?
old. Yeah, no,
You just reveal her age.
it's not that old.
so when you are there, you will notice that the lift, out of that 2 or 3 lifts, there's always one lift that's not working. Always. That's always the case. So we always have this problem for older buildings. When it gets older, a lot more repairs are needed, be it for the lifts, the lift shaft, the gym equipment, old gym equipment, the swimming pool gets a bit, not that great. Landscaping of the whole place, all these needs money. And where are the money going to come from? The money is going to come from residents, your monthly maintenance costs, or the sinking fund whereby you pay to carry out major works like this. So when it gets older and older, the works require more and more. Residents will then have to pay more and more. So when they have to pay more and more, they will come to a point where okay, enough is enough. I'm not going to continue paying this. Why not we just try to go for an en bloc? That's why a very old development is easier to persuade the existing owners to do it, to go for the en bloc. The third reason, when the building is old, or rather oldish, you would have higher percentage of the residents there who are the early buyers. They are people who bought maybe the first round, even second round. So you have buyers from the 1980s, 1990s, or even 2000. Even those that bought in the 2000, compared to now, they would have, you tell them to sell, a lot of them would have doubled. If you were to en bloc, offer them en bloc price right now, a lot of them would have doubled their purchase price already. Those who bought in the 1980s, maybe even 3 times, 4 times how much they paid, or even more. So older developments, when you have older developments, they have a bigger percentage of residents in this bracket. So more acceptable for en bloc. All right. Last and final component for property, healthy property sales. This is more macro in nature. In the past 3 years in Singapore, since 2019, all of us know that the property market has been red hot. 2021 last year was the craziest. So we have seen a very positive market sentiment. Even with COVID, we are seeing property prices going up. There's an increase in sales volume. There's an increase in property price index. So why is this very important? Because you have to understand, I stress again, developers en bloc aside to make money. They will only do it if they think the project will sell easily and they can make money off it. They won't do it when the market is in the dumps. No one is buying. Why would they en bloc and try to sell when no one is buying something? So strong existing property sales would encourage developers to bid for new en bloc sites, and then they will then be more bullish in their bid price. And of course, with a more bullish bid price, existing owners this price, okay, I can accept. Easier to go through. So strong residential sales like we would see in the past 3 years would create a shortage of land, whereby a lot of land, a lot of units are being sold. The developers, each developer have their own land bank, which is how much land they have. So these land banks are being depleted through these new sales. So they need to top up their land bank. So imagine they are like fishmongers. They need to sell fish. If they have no fish, they got nothing to sell. So they must always top up their land. And many of these developers are public listed company. So if the public know that, or rather shareholders know that, this developer got no more land already. That means in the next 2 years, their profits not going to be great. Then they'll start to dump their shares. So it will cause their price to go down. So they must always have land banks. And in Singapore, the only way we can acquire, developers can acquire land is 2 ways. One, through GLS, government land sale. And the second is en bloc. So when there is, it's a chain effect. When there's a lot of private residential sales, developers' land bank get depleted, they need to top up, they go for en bloc. So this is a cycle. All right, okay. Ken? So this concludes my four main points on what makes a property prime for en bloc. I'll hand the time over to Eric, whereby he will bring the interesting partner. All right.
Awesome. So whilst Eric just sets up for that, I just want to double check. Does anyone have any questions so far? I know we had a couple of people that have jumped in and joined us a little bit later. Guys, just so you know, we've got James and Eric with us. They're from ERA, and they are my resident experts. Whenever I have any questions with regards to property, they're the guys that I go to, just because they are incredibly knowledgeable, but also really nice guys in general. And that is a huge part of my life. Just really good people. So if you've got any questions, you can either drop them in the chat box. The chat box is also where we have the appointment form if you want to have an intimate chat with these guys and just get one-on-one grill time with them. Or if you would like to sign up for our next masterclass, I'll share a little bit more about that later on. But Eric, if we've got no questions, it's over to you, and I'm already seeing numbers. Guys, don't get scared if you don't understand Eric. We'll try and translate.
Yeah. So now is the very interesting topic. How much money does an en bloc owner actually makes from an en bloc? So every time, right, there's an en bloc, we always have heard en bloc millionaires or a super rich guy who doesn't have a home. So now we are using a few case studies, right, to actually find out how much does an en bloc owner actually earns if he gets en bloc. So the first one that we're going to go through is Flint Park. Flint Park is basically at District 5 at Buona Vista area. This is very near to our Greater Southern Waterfront City that our Prime Minister during the last National Day rally has actually announced to the entire Singapore community that there will be a keynote development along the entire Pasir Panjang as well as the CBD area. So Flint Park was being en bloc on October 2021 at 371 million. So this is a freehold status development. This is a free. This is a free. Yeah, appreciate if you can mute the mic, please. Thank you. So this is a freehold development, and there are only 72 units. Very special is majority of the units are of larger format. They are either 187 square meters or they are up to 203 square meters. Just now, James has mentioned that in order for a developer to be en bloc, right, there will be a need to have an increased plot ratio or unused gross floor areas so that the developer can actually build more units. So let's take a look how much more areas does the developer actually has if they en bloc Flint Park. So if you take the larger unit, right, 203 with times 72, which is the total number of units. Let me just take out a calculator, 203 times 72. So that will total to be around 14,616 square meters. This is the total gross floor area for Flint Park. But if you look at this area, the total usable gross floor area is actually 27,000. So there is almost double amount of gross floor area, right, that's not being utilized. And this gives the developer a very big incentive, meaning to say they can build more units or they can utilize more areas, right, in order to build more new condos and sell it off at a profit. So every single unit is actually profiting around 5.15 million. And if you can take a look, we have a very special case here. Flint Park 0406 was transacted very recently on the 4th of March 2020. It was transacted at 2.65 million. Wow, this guy really hot, I tell you, because 5.15 million and 2.65, right, is I think as good as 2.5 million difference in terms of pricing. But does he really take the 2.5 million worth of profit? Not really true, because all en bloc owners, right, will have to face this thing called a seller stamp duty, which is if you were to purchase any property that is within a 3 years limit, right, and it has been en bloc, so seller stamp duty will be imposed on the property owner or the en bloc owner. So let's take a look. How much did this en bloc owner actually profited from the en bloc that happened on the 5th October 2021? All right. So let's do a recap on the seller stamp duty. Let me just write it in blue. So seller stamp duty, right, if you are being en bloc immediately, right, within 0 to 1 years, there will be a seller stamp duty of 12% being imposed on the en bloc price or the market price, whichever is higher. If it's being done in between 1 to 2 years, the seller stamp duty will be reduced by 4% to 8%. If it's done between 2 to 3 years, the seller stamp duty will be reduced to 4%. And of course, from the 3rd year onwards, right? Congratulations. There will be 0% stamp duty imposed on you. So our dear 0406 for Flint Park, right? He bought the unit on the 3rd of March 2020. The en bloc happened on the 21st October or 5th October, sorry, 5th October 2021. So the difference in time will be probably around 1.5 years. That will be in this area. So literally, right, he needs to pay 8% stamp duty of 5.15 million to the Singapore government. Wow, I think for most of the Singaporeans, right, they will be very, very happy. And this is a very hefty amount.
412,000.
412,000. Wow, that's almost 500,000.
Yes.
Okay.
You could buy a house. You could buy another house for that.
Yeah, you can fully pay. Literally, you can really fully pay a HDB with 412,000. So just let me write it down. 8% of 5.15 million. That's around 412,000, right, James? James very fast. So let me just draw a time chart. So this guy purchased on the March 2020 at around 2.6 million. So normally for most of the purchaser for older properties, right, they will definitely renovate their units. And for a 200 square meters unit of substantial size, right, the renovation costs will not come cheap. Normally the renovation cost, right, if I have to put it in rate, I will guess that you will be easily 200,000. And probably he have paid 25% down payment, and the remaining 75% will be in loan. So there will be a substantial amount of cash forking out for the purchase of a 2.6 million property. So later, right, what happens is probably out of his expectation, there will be a formation of a collective sale community. And that's the start of the En Bloc. So when a community is being formed, there will be a few rounds of AGM. What they are aiming for, right, is they are aiming for 80% approval of sale on the reserve price. For this case, right, the reserve price is 371 million. So normally from the formation of sales and collective sales committee, right, to the 80% approval, the fastest is around 12 months. And then there will be a tender being called to all developers saying that Flint Park is actually 80% approval and we are selling at 3.71 million at a reserve price and looking for a developer to tender. So from this phase, right, will be probably around a 1 month phase. If they have a 100% approval, they can actually go on a private treaty within 10 weeks. So a developer comes by and says that, okay.
Sorry, I'm just going to interrupt you there. What do you mean by a private treaty?
Okay. So a private treaty, right, is they do not need to tender to the open market and they can deal directly with a developer at any price. They won't be at a reserve price because they have 100% consensus. So with 100% consensus, it's literally like a resale property. It's just that all the owners, right, will be standing at a unified fund, selling to a buyer at a negotiated price. But if you have only a 80% approval, for transparency's sake, there's a requirement of a tender. And the tender, right, will need to fulfill a few things. The most important thing is, of course, a reserve price. So anything that falls below the reserve price, right, after the tender can be negotiated, but subjected to the approval of the entire sales community.
Okay, so I have another follow-up question on that.
Yes.
What if initially they'd signed up for the En Bloc and they were for it, but then are they able to withdraw their interest or approval if the bid price is lower than that intended price, or is that reserve price like that's our minimum?
Okay, so for example, right, let's say let's take Flint Park for example. Let's say the reserve price is 371 million, and I am the developer. I am ABC company. I bid at 350 million, which is below the reserve price. So there will not be any transaction. However, I can move forward and renegotiate with the entire sales community on the price of 350 million, subjected to the approval of the entire owners of Flint Park. So if let's say, for example, they
have to get 100%?
They need to get 80%.
Or is it still the 80%?
Yes,
okay,
correct.
so it's still the 80%, but the whole 80% needs to re-agree on that new price.
150, yes.
Correct.
Okay, interesting.
So by the way, it's a very, very transparent process because the entire process, right, is governed by law. So like what James mentioned, the entire rejuvenation of Singapore, right, I think the government has actually forecast or have foreseen this process, right, very, very early. So the entire process is actually being governed by law. So with 371 million as tender price, they have actually secured the project, and they'll be distributing 5.1 million on average to the owners. However, at this point of time, right, they only pay a 1% option fee. So let's say, for example, I'm the owner of Flint Park. I'm supposed to get 5.15 million, but at this stage, I'm only getting $51,500. All right. Then there will be a exercise of option like a resale, which the developer then will pay the remaining 4% of the fees to the owners. At the same time, the owners, right, will need to pay the seller's stamp duty. So the SSD here, right, just now I have calculated is 412,000. The 4% they have actually gotten just now, just let me calculate, 0.04 times 5.15 million, that will constitute to be around 210,000. So at the very starting stage.
at the starting point, that 25% down payment, I'd calculated that plus the was about 650,200.
Mm-hmm. So at the very starting point, if you notice, right, there is actually a deficit of cash flow because what you have gotten is far lesser than what you need to pay the Singapore government. So if you are a person who is not financially very strong, right, you probably need to find other options of taking a loan or writing into IRAS, right, for delay payment of the seller's stamp duty.
Okay, I'm going to put in here. This is the part where I speak Eric. So basically what Eric is mentioning is that when the developer they agreed to pay the owners 5.15 million, they won't pay you 5.15 million at one shot. They'll pay you 1%, and then after that, they'll pay you a 4% excise fee. So in totality, you get 5%, which will roughly come up to 260,000 thereabouts. But when the developer pay the 4%, they have exercised the option to purchase Twin Park. And if you are this particular Mr. 0403, 0406, when that happens, you need to pay your seller stamp duty, which amounts to around 412,000. You only receive 260,000, and then you need to pay 412,000. So you see there's a shortfall.
So I have a question then. What if you can't pay? Like, I don't know about you. I just don't have that kind of cash sitting in my bank account. I'm like, what am I gonna do? Like, yeah, I know you mentioned. So really, just appeal or like is.
So basically, this seller stamp duty of 412,000 is payable to IRAS, the Singapore government. So of course, if you don't pay, they'll come after you lah. But if you really know money, you say, hey, look, I don't have that kind of money. All my money I pay with the developers that 5%, not even to cover my thing. So you will have to appeal to IRAS, appeal to their good self, say, look, and see what they can do for you. So the appeal will be on a case-by-case basis. We will not be able to say what exactly will happen because, as I mentioned, it's on a case-by-case appeal basis. Okay.
True. Fair enough. But I guess that just goes to show that whilst, yes, it's a huge windfall, if you don't have deep pockets and you end up like Mr. 0406, you could be in deep doo-doos, and you really have to take it into consideration. Like, I mean, anyone who's moving into one of those lovely old apartments, you know, that's always going to be a real thing, right?
So what Eric mentioned is for those people who are recent buyers of all these en bloc properties. So some people might argue, but if I bought it more than 3 years ago, happy days. Or that 5.15, I don't have to pay any stamp duty. I don't have to pay any seller stamp duty. Everything is good. But is everything all good? Eric, I think you can continue this part.
Yeah, fundamentally, you're correct. So there's a need to fork out a certain sum of money, right? For example, you're only getting 5%, but you need to fork out the seller stamp duty. And of course, the major question is, or the $1 million question is, when am I getting back the remaining 95%? That will probably be after the approval of the Strata Title Board, STB in short, as well as what we call a completion that will be 3 months later. Normally from the exercise of option to approval of Strata Title Board as well as completion, right, will be at least a 12 months period. So fundamentally, right, 12 months period, because it's a legal process. So fundamentally, right, we have 2 issues here. Number 1 issue is, although our dear 0406 owner, right, earns around close to minus 2.65 million, 2.6 million minus 412,000. He nets close to 2 million. However, the 2 million, right, only comes in much later after the en bloc, which is probably 12 to 18 months on a general basis. So the first issue is definitely how is he going to pay the seller stamp duty? The second issue will be opportunity cost, because at this point of time, at the completion, he's required to shift out for tearing down the entire building. So he needs to seek his second home. But the majority of the 2 million in profit, as well as his down payment for his house earlier on, only comes in at a much later time. So fundamentally, this owner must have enough financial muscles in order for his next purchase. So if he doesn't have, right, his next purchase will probably be delayed. There is the need for him to rent a certain unit before he can purchase his next unit. So there could be a possible loss of opportunity cost because of the en bloc. But then again, 2 million is a sweet deal, right? James and Kelly, would you all choose to have a 2 million, or would you all choose
No,
to?
man.
So it's definitely 2 million is definitely a lot of money, but
Yes.
I was going to say it's $1 million question, but then I realized it's actually a $2 million question. Actually, I'd like to ask everyone who's on our chat at the moment, what would you guys do? You can just type it in our chat box below. I'd love to hear from you guys. What would you do? Would you go for the en bloc and potentially get that 2 mil if you were Mr. 0406 in this scenario? Because I guess we're also imagining, what if you are looking for an en bloc opportunity such as this, but you're running that sort of very same risk, right? Okay, so Jeffrey says yes. How about the rest of you guys? Just type it in. I want to see what you guys think, because I think it really goes to show. Oh, Charlene's like, go for it, man. What? Yes, very what. Okay, fair point. Okay, like I think a lot of people would have big eyes when you see like the $2 million opportunity. And to be fair, I think I possibly would too. You'd be like, okay, try and suck it up, beg Boris Steele to try and get the money to pay the stamp duty. But it's a very real challenge. And I think especially if he hadn't said yes, if he wasn't one of the 80%.
Yes.
Right, if you're forced into that situation, I think that's when it gets really rough. But I guess such is life, and it's a gamble when you buy an older property, right? So that's the way the cookie crumbles. Okay, Eric, what else have you got for us?
Okay, I think that's a very happy problem, but I just want to do a disclaimer. Not every single en bloc, right, will let you earn such a big sum of money, because this is a very big unit. This is a very old unit, and there's a significant increase in gross floor area. That's why the payout is so huge. Let's take a look at the second example. All right.
Eric, can I pause you for a moment? So basically, for those people who say, look, 2 million is a lot of money, but I want to bring everybody's attention back. So while waiting for the 2 million to come back, you would then have to buy something or rent something. When you rent something, of course, there is a rental cost, but to be honest, rental cost is insignificant compared to the 2 million. But my point here is your 2 million, you will not be able to use it at least until the money comes in, which is, I would say, a good 1.5 years later. With inflation, that 2 million might not actually be 2 million in 1.5 years' time. Property prices might have increased considerably in that 1.5 years, as we can see in our past 2 years in Singapore. So there you are, en bloc, they tell you, okay, by this date, I need the place. So you would know that you would have to go look for a place. So happily you go house hunting, house shopping. You see something you like, you say, okay lah, I buy lah. I put my down payment. I put my 4%, but I don't have money to complete the sale because the proceeds will be coming in much, much later. So I can only buy something when my 2 million is in. So opportunity cost Eric's referring to here is the units you're getting could be a bit more expensive already. All right, Eric.
Yeah. So let's take a look at the second example. The second example is Gloria Mansion. This is just done on the January 20th, 2022. Just let me bring out my pen. Doesn't work, sorry. So this is also a freehold property, and coincidentally, right, this is also happening at District 5 which is very near to our GSW, or short term for Greater Southern Waterfront City. So you can see, right, just now, James' first point was talking about the growth and the potential of the area. So developers like to unblock properties that are probably in the growth area, because there is a story for them to sell. We in sales, we say this as a unique selling point. Secondly is, of course, there will be an increased potential in the entire areas when government pumps in additional cash. So this property was completed in 1995, sorry. And it is also a freehold property, and there is a total of 31 units. So this development is very special because it happened after the December 2021 cooling measure. So a recap on what happened in the December 2021 cooling measure is there is an increase in the ABSD for developers from 25% plus 5% non-reversible ABSD to 35% plus 5% non-reversible ABSD. So what it means to a lot of the developers is, if I were to unblock a big site, or I were to unblock a development, and I do not manage to sell it off within 5 years from the purchase date, I will be imposed a 35% tax or ABSD, right, on the entire purchase price for the land. So if you purchase something that is 100 million, you need to pay 5 years later an additional 35 million. And that's why majority of the developers right now are more keen in a smaller or mid-sized development. Gloria mentioned under 100 million is considered a smaller bite-sized development that is very well received among small as well as mid-sized developers. As compared to our ultra-large developments in Singapore, that has probably in excess of $900 to $1 billion in total value. All right. So each unit in Gloria mentioned is being compensated at 2.27 million. So we have a few owners, in fact, that is bought at 2018 and 2019, right? They bought it at close to 1 million. So it's $1 million profit. Of course, for this case, right, because they have bought it 3 years or more, they will not be imposed on the seller's stamp duty. So the 1 million profit will be a net profit for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay. Now for the golden question. What is our home truth take for the 3 top picks of En Bloc? Is anybody here in the audience that looking for En Bloc properties? Can you type 1 or show of hands?
Just type 1 to say if you are specifically looking for En Bloc property. Anyone?
Yeah, you see, I wanna say like yes me, but at the same time I'm like, I'd be too scared.
No one.
Okay. Oh, okay. We have Galvin who wants to look for En Bloc properties. Okay. So firstly, right, we all must do a disclaimer. All our 3 top picks, right? We are not marketing any units there, so there will not be any conflict of interest. So it will not be the case that James and I have many units in this resale developments, and we are pushing for this development for sale, and we're saying that you'll be En Bloc. It is not the case. So I just want to do a disclaimer. Me and James, we don't have any resale units there. But of course, if any of the owners of our picks that happen to be there and want us to sell the property on their behalf, right, we'll be happy to. But our advice is, I think there's a good possibility for this En Bloc to happen. Maybe you want to hold it for a longer while. All right. So let's
look at you go, already in sales mode. Okay, come on. I think this is one thing that everyone wants to know. It's like, okay, where are the potential windfalls? Come on.
Okay, let's take a look. So our first top 3 picks. So our first pick is actually at Holland Tower. This is a small size development. There's only 19 units. So it's very special. In 2018, right, it has a reserve price of 65 million, but it did not go through. But recently, we do have some developments, new developments around that area. For example, Leiden Green as well as 15 Holland Hill. They are selling on an average price of between 2,007 per square feet and 3,000 per square feet. So we feel that there is a lot of potential if, let's say, Holland Tower is to be unblocked at a reserve price of 65 million or 1,498 per square feet plot ratio. Because if you go back and see Leiden Green, right? Leiden Green's land price was close to 1,007 to 1,008 per square feet plot ratio. So we think that there is a significant margin and developer will be significantly interested. But of course, the con side to this is for District 10 properties, normally the buyers will prefer a very big floor plate. So having a small size development would have its natural cons, but it do has its pros because a 65 million reserve price is a very small quantum and you will appeal to many small and mid-sized development. So if you can divide it into 100 square meters, roughly you can fetch around 40 units. But of course, it's subjected to developer whether they want to build 40 units or they can choose to build 20 units or even 30 units of a bigger scale floor plate, right? So our first pick, Holland Tower.
Second pick.
Our second pick is a very highly contested area. This is Lakeside Apartments. So for those who are very well versed in the URA master plan, you know that Jurong Lake District is the URA key developing areas to form the Singapore second CBD. So this is a 99 years leasehold property. There are a total of 120 units there. So this is considered more like a mid-sized development because the quantum is in excess of 100 million, below 500 million. That's probably around 205 million reserve price in 2019. It has a bigger brother called Lake Point Apartments. Now it's under negotiation for en bloc. We're not so sure whether you will go through because it's a very, very big development. It has around, if I never remember wrongly, there is probably a reserve price of close to 900 million to $1 billion. Okay?
Wow.
So for a developer to redevelop Lake Point Apartments will be of significant risk. We think the younger brother Lakeside Apartments will be a more bite-sized development to be redeveloped. More importantly, right, Lakeside Apartment has a very strong attribute because it faces an unblocked view of the Japanese and the Chinese garden. So for most of the development, right, that will be a very, very good selling point because the entire landscaping will be very nice. The entire Chinese and Japanese gardens will be redeveloped into a tourist area based on URA master plan. So that could be a very strong attribute for a developer to reconsider if they were to unblock a Lakeside Apartments. But of course, the con side to Lakeside Apartments will be the traffic condition. So the developers will have probably do a feasibility studies. If you were to incorporate another 261 units in, this is one of the requirements stated by URA in 2017 that every developer will have to do a feasibility studies before the strata board approval. Right.
So this is just to assess whether the roads can handle the volume of traffic in that area.
Yes. So
I'm pretty sure there are some places that clearly do not meet those requirements. Like, have you driven down Telok Kurau and seen like all the like small little? I used to live on Lorong M, and like this whopping development came up, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like you literally cannot drive down that street. It's a nightmare.
Oh yeah. So now the developers, right, are being imposed an additional requirement because this is a very important feasibility studies. In fact, for most of the en bloc owners, right, they will have to do their own feasibility study at the very start, so that could be a selling point or assurance to the developer before they even bid the development. We do see some of the new condos, for example, Treasure and Tampines, building additional routes to expressway to elevate the entire traffic so that they can pass the stringent test from the URA master planners. Okay, so we have seen the small size, we have seen the middle size home through pick. Let's take a look at the large size development that we have picked. So,
okay.
So what is the pros and cons of a small size and the large size development? Of course, the smaller it is, the chances of it to be unblocked is higher. But just in case you are because every Singaporean can only buy one property, right? Probably you buy for stay, or if it's not for stay, right, you probably want to rent it out before it is en bloc or going for en bloc. Then a significant size or significant development size, right, will be very popular for rental or for own stay because there will be probably more facilities. All right. But of course, the probability of en bloc drops very significantly if the quantum of the entire developments increase. So our pick for the large size development is actually Sinsville. This is a very, very popular condo near Paya Lebar. So it's near to our Paya Lebar redevelopment areas. And if you're very familiar with the east side or central east, you know that we have PLQ or Paya Lebar quarters with malls, offices being built there. And there's also another condominium called Park Place Residence that is being developed probably around 3 to 5 years before 2022. So at that point of time, Park Place Residence was very, very popular. During launch, right, they sold in excess of 50%. So we think that Sinsville will probably be also a very highly sought after developments for the developer. So the en bloc price is probably around 859 million to 900 million. And this is considered quite a big quantum for most of the developers. I think if they were to bid this land, they will require a JV or joint venture in order to reduce the risk significantly. However, if they were to redevelop this land, right, they will be able to have economics of scale because of significant amount of units to be sold. It can be redeveloped into at least 539 units, averaging 100 square meters for this area.
So correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, like the current total units 521 in terms of like economies of scale, like that boost of an additional sort of like how many units, like almost an extra 20 units, right? Yep. Doesn't really seem like it would be worth their time and money.
Okay, so in the URA master plan, there are areas which can build at least 100 square meters. But for most of the areas in Singapore, right, the minimum requirement is actually 85 square meters in nature. So if we were to do addition and subtraction, right, actually we can build more than 539 units in nature. You can hit up to close to 700 units. But for safety's sake, right, normally when we access a unit for redevelopment, we try to keep it at a very conservative range of 100 square meters.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough.
Okay, so a recap on the 3 topics of home truth. Number 1, the small size development. We are advocating Holland Tower has a very high chance. Number 2, for a mid-size development, we are advocating that lakeside apartment will have a high chance. And of course, number 3, for a big size development, right, we are advocating on Sinsville at Paya Lebar.
So like we said earlier on, none of us have any vested interest in these 3 properties whatsoever. And I think that's important to note. So this is just us looking into our crystal ball, or rather James and Eric, because I have no idea what I'm looking for and I'm relying on their expertise here. And that's why they're the ones doing this presentation. Okay, great. So now that we know all of this, I mean, I guess there's also room for missed opportunity as well, right? Like if we're looking at these 3 properties and going, you know what, err on the side of caution, I guess you could stand a chance to miss out, right? James, this I feel strikes a note with you.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so Eric just now was, Eric is the data one I want to talk about. So she has a lot of data. If any of you feels a bit lost, don't worry about it. Even as his partner, sometimes I also feel lost. So if you guys feel lost, don't worry about it. Hit us up, send us a DM. I will translate Eric to you. So it's a lot more easier to understand. But he mentioned just now. He mentioned about the Gloria Mansion. Gloria Mansion.
Laura mentioned, yes, you're right.
The one was what was it? It was the other case talk about.
Flynn.
Flynn Park.
So it was like, wow, these people are very lucky. But those are people we don't know. let's talk about someone that we know. All right. This is my Changi Garden story.
Sounds so personal.
People who attended our earlier masterclass, the first masterclass, we heard about Kelly's $80,000 mistake when she bought a wrong resale. This is my $800,000 mistake. All right.
Wow.
The year was 2016, quarter 3. I just had my first child, my daughter, in July. So my wife and I were looking for a bigger space. Previously, we were in a small 3-room HDB. So we were looking around, limited budget, like $1 million. So we were looking around trying to find something that works for us. Search within the east, so we found Changi Gardens. It was a 3rd floor walk up. I remember very clearly. I know the unit number, but for privacy's sake, I shall not review. It was a 3rd floor walk up, 1,400 square feet. The asking price was 1.1 million. I still remember it was beautiful, spacious, overlooking this green open green field. And because it was all low lying, it was very breezy, bright, breezy, perfect. Asking 1.1, nego, 1 million. Owner said, okay, 小弟, 1 million, take it. All right. So I wrote the one.
Oh, you still call yourself 小弟?
The uncle told me 小弟, 1 million. So I wrote the 1 million check. I called my wife. I said, hey, settle already. 1%. If you're okay, I go up and give the check already. Then the wife say, no, cannot. Too ulu. Changi leh, Loyang leh. Very inconvenient. 3rd floor walk up will die. Imagine the kid, stroller up, down 3 stories. Cannot. Very troublesome. And then the house, very old. A lot of renovation needed. Then looking out, very near Changi prison. Maybe dangerous. Later got prisoners run out. I said, huh? How? Really don't want? Don't want. Insist. Argument. Don't want. I said, okay lah. Bo pian buy house. Husband and wife must happy ma. She don't want. Fine. Move on. Then fast forward in time. This article. Changi Gardens has been en bloc for 248.8 million by Chip and Sing. This article is in October 2017. All right. And then if you see here, oops, sorry. Each apartment owner will receive between 2.14 and 2.27 million. So this is around 1.5 years later from where I was. All right. 2.14 million, minimally, 2.14 million. Okay, let's see. 2.14 million. I bought at 1 million. I would have paid stamp duty, buyer stamp duty, 24,600. Like Eric mentioned, like the same guy at Flint Park, because it's still in my 2nd year, I will need to pay the seller stamp duty 8%, 171,000. Also, I need to renovate 1,004 square feet, $100 per square feet, 140,000. After everything, minus off everything, still got 800,000. 800 in 1.5 years. Of course, this one, water under the bridge already. But heart pain, never mind. Because I missed that, I found this. No complaints. I'm very happy with where I am. I think my wife is still in the chat, but never mind. So this is a real life story of how an en bloc can actually change your life, because I would think that if I have that 100,000, my wife now not working anymore already. So this is a very classic example. So we always hear, if that's the case, is buying an en bloc property suitable for everyone? It seems like everybody said.
Before we go on to that, James, can you imagine how ripped you would be if you had to carry a stroller up and down 3 flights of stairs every day?
True story. Yes.
Just trying to make you feel a little bit better about that, but hey, never mind. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, this is something that I was going to ask as well. you guys have talked a lot about the potential windfalls. We've heard a bit about the problems as well.
Yes.
But then is it something that everyone should consider, or I don't know, who is it for?
So don't get me wrong. Basically, En Bloc, it's okay. Let me go back first. We all know En Bloc is potentially a very, very good money-making venture. Just now Eric said, I can earn 2 million, then next guy earn 1 million, I can possibly earn 800,000. It's a lot of money for the average Singaporean. So we know it's very, very good, but it is only good if it happens. And more often than not, it does not happen. It's like striking the lottery. All right.
That's
so
like buying a 4D.
It represents a windfall. So a lot of some of our clients also, they tell me, James, I want to buy En Bloc. My friend kena En Bloc, very lucky. I also want. So they actively go look for it. If it happens, happy days. Everybody is happy. But what if it doesn't? What if you go into buying an En Bloc property, hoping for En Bloc, but it doesn't? What happens? Firstly, you will be stuck with living in an older property. And in general, older properties, not so fun to live in. All right. You have very dated gym, swimming pool, not great. You have a very tired and dated facade. And of course, I always mention lift problem. Lift problem is very common for older properties. All right. Mechanical, over 20, 30 years, it's bound to break down. So you'll be stuck living in an older property. Second, I mentioned also, older properties, maintenance, sinking costs keeps increasing. You have no choice but to keep on paying every month. So what used to be $400 a month becomes $600 a month, becomes $800 a month, because more and more money is required to upkeep the whole development. So you buy an En Bloc property, hoping to En Bloc, but then it failed. 3 years later, you try again, failed again. What happens? You get lesser years on the lease. So especially if it's a freehold, okay, never mind, not so bad. If it's a leasehold, you get lesser and lesser years on the lease. When you have lesser and lesser years on lease, your potential buyer pool is also getting smaller. Because when the development is old, the amount of CPF that can be used is also lesser. Bank loan will also be affected. Like we always know, bank can loan up to 75% of your loan to value ratio. But if it's less, it's a very old property, less than maybe 50 years old, 40 years old, the bank, to mitigate their risk, they might only lend you maybe 70% rather than the usual 75%. So with that, your potential buying pool is smaller. All right. So chances are you might not be able to make a profit when you are selling to an end user. If you are buying En Bloc property and you don't sell it to a developer, you're selling to an end user, chances are you won't be making a lot of money. More often than not, buyers, like Kelly previously, when you were selling your place, it's because you had to move due to schools or bigger family size. So imagine you bought a 2-bedroom hoping to En Bloc, make some money out of it, but it doesn't happen. But your family got bigger. They need to move. So you can't wait anymore for the next round of En Bloc. You sell, but with all these points which I just mentioned, it's not going to be great for selling. You might have to sell at a bit of a loss. So that is what happens if the En Bloc doesn't come. So is it suitable for you? For the older generation, I would say, yeah, go for it. They can afford to stay. 7 years, they try for En Bloc, doesn't come, never mind. 7 years, 10 years, 15 years, not an issue for them. In this particular instance, they have the luxury of time. If it happens in their lifetime, they can experience one final windfall. If it doesn't, what happens when they pass on? It gets willed to their kids. Very sure within the kids' generation, the En Bloc will happen. And then the kid will then enjoy the windfall. So no matter what, that En Bloc windfall stays in their family. But for the younger generation, maybe for Kelly, for myself, not so much Eric.
Ouch.
If the en bloc doesn't come, it can be quite a challenge for them when, as I mentioned, they have to move and everything. And when they don't sell to a developer, they might really lose money off it. Okay, so summary, older generations can try for it. Younger generations, I would not recommend to take this risk. There are definitely other property investments that they can undertake, which are a lot less risky, but still financially rewarding. So our take over here is en bloc is good if it happens. If it doesn't, but we always have to brace ourselves for the worst. What if it doesn't happen? So older generations can take this risk. Younger generations try not to take this risk. All right.
Especially if you end up like Mr. 0406.
Happy days.
Darn. Fantastic. Okay, I think we've covered like a lot of really good points from sort of talking through the 4 points earlier on about what makes it a good property, about giving you our top picks and talking through the pros and cons in terms of the financial boons and banes of an en bloc potential. So I'd like to say a big thank you to Eric and James. I'm just conscious of time because we're approaching 9:30. So I'd like to say a big thank you to everyone who's joined us. I know that we've had a couple of people who joined us late as well. So thank you guys very much for being a part of our En Bloc Masterclass. Just pointing out over in our chat right at the very top, we will repost it for you so it's at the bottom. If you want to talk to James or Eric, you can just drop us a little note. We've got an appointment form out there for you. Our next masterclass is going to be on freehold versus leasehold. Now that's going to be a really interesting one because this used to be one of my biggest questions when we were looking at buying property. And I think for a lot of people, it still remains one of the key things that people consider. And it does play a huge part about your property choices. And I think there is a way to get over that and be less fixated on that, but I'm going to let both James and Eric fill you in on that. So you can sign up for that masterclass right now. It'll be on the 16th of February, same time, 8 p.m. as well. But on that note, I'm going to say thank you very much to everyone for joining us here this evening. Thank you for all your questions earlier on. Kendra, it was nice chatting with you earlier. All the best to you. But James, Eric, thank you so much for sharing all of that knowledge. Like I said, any questions, just drop us a note in our appointment form and we'll get back to you guys directly. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a fantastic evening and we will see you again really, really soon. Goodbye. Oh, if we don't see you before Chinese New Year, 新年快乐，祝你身体健康，心想事成。Okay, all right, bye bye.